So I'm kind of bored like you guys with a lot of the stuff going on in the PC industry right now. So I just started perusing Amazon, looking for weird things. And anytime I do that, you guys seem to enjoy it because sometimes we find stuff that we never expected, like a gamer refrigerator, a little desk fridge, $100 monitor that apparently has really good gaming specs, part of Amazon Basics in collaboration with AOC, mini PCs that actually have pretty decent specs that cost a significant amount less than you would expect, and gamer finger socks. Anyway, that's not what we're gonna talk about today. These are future videos coming up. But today we're gonna talk about this. This is the Dark Rock PX4. Not to be confused with Be Quiet's Dark Rock. I'm not quite sure how they're getting away with the naming scheme, but I digress. This is a $16.98 cooler. What could go wrong? Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter.
So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies. Okay, so in terms of specs though, it's 120 millimeter by 72 by 152. So it's 152 millimeters high, 72 millimeters, whatever, right? All people tend to care about is the height. It's actually 72 millimeters thick, 120 millimeter diameter, so it's a 120 millimeter fan. Does support LGA 1700. So that was my first concern, is like, will it work with the latest socket? Also does LGA 1200, 11.5X, so all the 1150s, 1152s, 1156, AMD's AM5 and AM4. Cool. It says it can handle 200 watts of TDP. So we might start with a 13900K and see how it can do. And then instead of changing like our actual CPU, I'll probably just turn off cores to represent other CPUs. Believe it or not, it actually works pretty close that way to figure out what the actual like thermal capabilities are. Has 4 pure copper heat pipes, which are technically gonna be phase change. All heat pipes are phase change pipes, or vapor chamber, I should say. And then the fan speed says 700 to 1800 RPM. It's a 4-pin PWM, 22.3 decibels. That's really low, so I'm curious. Accessories included 1 gram tube of high performance thermal paste, backplate mounting set for Intel and AMD, and a PX4 manual. I'm gonna be using the thermal paste it comes with. The reason for that is if you buy any reputable brand thermal paste, it will probably cost more than the cooler itself. So we're gonna see if you were on an extreme budget, whether or not this cooler can get the job done. It actually doesn't look that bad, to be honest. It actually reminds me very close of like the V-True V5 cooler that I did. Also too, if you're watching this video, let me tell you right now, I'm gonna be putting the link to this down in the cart below, or down in the description below. If you have any interest in this cooler, and it performs even somewhat decent, I highly recommend you pick one up. No, it's not sponsored, I bought it, okay? We all know, after this video, this will be a $30 cooler. We all know how it works, okay? It sucks I can only do a video one time like this and then the brand goes and screws it up for everybody else. And then eventually the price will probably come back down. But for $16, I can't, what's the exact amount? I know it was $16. I wanna know what the change is because I don't wanna just randomly say an amount. $16.59. It was actually 8% on sale, normally $17.99. First review, a truly impressive performance for the price. Pretty quiet and keeps mid-tier CPUs cool. They're running a 12600K and it keeps it around 58C under all core stress test. 58C, I'm actually gonna call maybe shenanigans on that temp. I have a 12900K and it cools it really fine. Don't need a water cooler, does the job for me. And then another one says screws are too big to fit. So anyway, one person's running a 12900K. So I will start with a 13900K, and then we'll see like if I turn off cores and make it like a, something like represent maybe like a 13700K or something like that. We'll see what happens. Silica, this is all you get in the box. So the fan's already attached, which is nice. And it uses essentially identical clips to how the Be Quiet stuff is. Like it's identical. So I'm starting to wonder if this is maybe like a OEM rebrand kind of a thing. The fan actually seems like a decent quality. The The cage is a little bit on the thin side, but it actually has rubber mounts, which are anti-vibration, which would be nice. The screws to mount it down are like captured in there with like a C-clip. They are spring-loaded, so you might need to remove the fan, maybe. I don't know, it seems to accommodate the fan just fine. You can see it's offset. You can actually see how the pipes like bend like that. So the fan would go on the ram side. That way you're pushing air towards the back of the case and your rear fan can pick up that heat and just exhaust it out the back. It's black. I don't know if it's a Cerakote. It could be a Cerakote, it could be a ceramic coat. For this price, it's hard to say. I hope it's not just paint, because paint actually could insulate and hurt its performance a little bit. We can actually see right there, we do have the 4 copper heat pipes that are exposed copper, and they are shaved flat. And then you have sort of the heat sink in between, which is kind of soldered between the heat pipes to help dissipate heat across the IHS into the cooler. Past that, the mounting hardware, I already talked about what it supports. These spacers being kind of like a baby blue are interesting. Normally these are just black. Additional clips, so if you want to set it up as a push-pull, that could help. If the fan moves enough air, the cooler's not thick enough or dense enough to really necessarily need push-pull. I don't think adding push-pull would really add to the cooling capabilities of it, but you never know. Here are the 115X AMDs. These are the Intel 11700. These are the Intel brackets. And then we obviously have pretty standard stuff. Like I have seen these exact mounts in a ton of other cooler boxes. Like this looks identical to the, be quiet. So I'm starting to really wonder if this is literally a knockoff of like a Dark Rock Mini kind of a deal. These are our Intel AMD brackets. So this is what actually gets mounted down onto the motherboard. And then you can see how they have these studs. Not this stud right here. It's got these studs, which is what these threads thread down on. Also too, they give you 1 gram of thermal paste. There's not a lot in here. So get it right the first time, because you all know on 12th gen and up CPUs, the IHS is pretty big, and you can tell by how much of the plunger is sticking out versus how long the actual tube is, that less than half of that is filled. So you do need more than an average pea size or grain of rice these days to clear and cover an IHS. They do give you a spatula too, that way you can like spread the paste. Yeah, maybe I'll show you guys once the thermal paste is on the CPU before I apply the cooler, just how much there was prior to installation. So here's the hardware installed. Everything clear so far, at least on our motherboard. This is kind of a crowded board with the block and stuff here. So you can see it all fits just fine. Doesn't hit any of our standoff, or not our standoffs, but our caps right here. Should spread just fine. There's a fair amount of paste actually. So you definitely will get an application out of it. Not 2 though, that's for sure, because there's not much left in there. And this might seem like an awful lot of thermal paste, believe it or not, for a 1300, it's actually not a lot. Now when it comes to trying to spread it, it definitely feels like a thick cake frosting, but there's plenty on here. And yeah, it may not look like it's getting all the way to the edges or something, but it still will spread once it's down under tension. And I still have a little bit on the spatula there. At the same time, when it gets warm, it'll get liquidy and then it will sort of fill in the gaps a little better. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put another little drop right in the center, because there's still some left, and that'll help promote some of the spread. Thermal paste applications are not as sensitive as people might like to try and make them out to be. So the orientation, you're not necessarily locked in. You could rotate it if you wanted, as long as the overhang, as you can see, there is some overhang here to allow for AMD sockets as well. If you want to turn them, so let's say you have a case that you need to exhaust out the top or something like that, you might have some clearance issues with the extra width hitting something like over here, or maybe even interfering with that inside stick of RAM. So I only use 2 sticks of RAM in any of my systems, so it wasn't a problem for this build. So as you can see, I'm actually gonna have some interference right here. I actually touched the paste a little bit, but the fan hits right here. The cooler clears it, but the fan is actually hitting it. Now you see how the fan is overhanging down on the bottom? I can actually just undo these clips, and then I can scoot the fan up, maybe to make it a little bit more flush with the bottom, like that. So now we should clear. It kind of looks stupid hanging off the top, but this is the thing. It's really tight with this particular type of heatsink for the VRMs. So now we're down. So I just wanted to show right there, this is the kind of stuff that I think when you read reviews, like on Amazon and stuff, maybe less experienced builders might just be like, oh my gosh, it hits, and then that's it. They're like, oh, they don't realize that they can adjust the fan height. And this is true for almost any cooler on this type of motherboard. This very unflattering angle is brought to you by trying to reach power button. It's installed, you can see it clears the GPU and stuff just fine. Let me try and turn it in an angle you guys can see. So that's one of the things some of the big coolers have a problem with, is they're so wide that they might interfere with the GPU cooler or the GPU if it has a top slot that's like real close to the CPU. This particular board happens to have like a half slot thing, sort of because of the display in between the cooler, which helps. I do wish the cooler was a little taller before the main heatsink started, because then we wouldn't have issues with like it hitting on the VRM and stuff like that. But once I got the cooler mounted down, I was able to lower the fan a little bit. So now you can see we don't have nearly as much hanging off the top. I wanted as much air going through the fins as possible. Now, one thing I've noticed is like just handling it, trying to get it mounted down and stuff, the fins are really thin, so it's easy to bend them. Like I bent these over here, as you can see, the middle's kind of pushed down a little bit. They definitely feel like you're getting what you paid for. So I feel like if this is a ripoff of like a Be Quiet cooler, that they just took the design and applied a cheaper material to it. What I'm gonna do right now too, because I wanna know what the maximum cooling capability is, I'm gonna start by having the fan profile set to like turbo. And then if that's just not enough, we might just end up going full speed the whole time. I can feel the airflow all the way out here though. Okay, so we're on stock out of the box settings with XMP profiled for our RAM. As you can see right now, just sitting in the desktop, our package is at 36. Our cores are between 29 and 35, not terrible. I did have the NVIDIA driver installing for this GPU I just plopped on here, and you can see that the hottest core we got to so far was 68. A couple 68 there as well, 60 on that one. Not a very heavily multi-threaded task, obviously. I'm gonna go ahead and just start with Cinebench. I expect this to be a disaster. I also kind of want Cinebench to heat up that paste and liquefy it real quick to get it to spread nicely. Then we'll look at real world scenarios of like gaming and stuff like that, and just browsing to see what the CPU temperature looks like, because Cinebench is not real world. It is a stress test on purpose that'll push your CPU harder than just about no average consumer sitting at home playing games, surfing the internet, doing documents, taxes, writing, doing homework, whatever, surfing, browsing, getting emails, will never, ever, ever see their CPU get pushed like Cinebench. If you're a professional, you might, but you're also not gonna be buying this cooler if you're professional either, because you already know better than to spend that little on a cooler. So let's go ahead and just start multi-core and see what happens here. We're looking here, this is what we're looking at. I'm expecting to see 100C instantly. There it is, 100C instantly on the package. Our clock speeds are slowing down because of it. Actually, we're at 5.1 all-core. I mean, 5.4 all-core is the max that I think 5.4 is the max we expect to see, maybe 5.5 with like AIOs and stuff. It dropped down to 5,000 already. But it still gave us a 36,687. Now, it's gimped our performance a bit because of the fact that the 100C, it pulled 323 watts. That means this motherboard is also still pushing the CPU farther than it's supposed to, because 253 watts is where we're supposed to max out. So that means the optimized defaults for this motherboard are already like affecting our performance. And that's a bigger gripe that we have about the way motherboard manufacturers implement their own BIOS settings on top of the Intel recommended. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back into the BIOS, I'm gonna put on the Intel limits and see. There's 236, 252, look at that, 89, 91, 90, so we're not even throttling. Technically, we're at 5.1 gigs, which is now realistically within the... So see, people see the up to, and they start to go, oh, well, I'm not getting 5.5 like it said on the up to out of the box, but that's 5.5 based on some very specific criteria, also including ridiculous cooling. If you could keep it down to like 60 degrees under load, like a crazy water cooling setup or something, and you get the voltage dialed in just right, you could probably get that 5.5 on this cooler. But even the fact that we saw 5.1 at all core, and we did hit 100C right towards the end, but look, we got 37,093. So still lower than the 13900K should be hitting. It should be landing around 39,000 or so. But again, we're on a $17 cooler. Let's keep that in mind. So real quickly, I'm gonna do some voltage adjustment to this just to see if I can get us to stay in the higher boost clocks by now adjusting voltage. Again, these are problems with the platform, not the cooler. All right, so here we go, let's see. 85C, 5.3 gigahertz all core right there, 5.2 gigahertz on the efficiency core. This is more in line with what I'm expecting to see. 97, that's like right there, 99, no, one of the cores hit it. 37408, right? Let's do something now like Cyberpunk. So it just like hard crashed launching Cyberpunk, so it means I have to bring the voltage up some. But again, my voltage, and it just did a full reset of the system. That voltage I set was really for Cinebench. I didn't think, I haven't been able to run a single 13900K even at stock speeds at minus 125 or 115, so I'm surprised. Like the most I ever got to was about minus 100. I'm probably gonna go like minus 90 right now to see, because I think that'll still be fine for things like games and such. So using my FLIR camera here while I'm waiting for the system to restart, because it hung again. It's being really stupid for me right now. I wanted to kind of show how the heat dissipation works here through the heat pipes. So you can clearly see, like looking down, it's kind of hard to see the heat, but if you look straight on, you can actually see the heat pipes for sure. And you can see how hot it is towards the bottom versus how cool it gets towards the top. So you notice a lot of that heat starts to not really radiate across the fins themselves. And so we get to the point to where you can see that it's actually dissipating heat. So this is basically where like the efficiency of the cooling down in the cooler down here in the bottom half is really having to do most of the work when it comes to a heat sink. So this is why the large heat sinks matter, because you have more surface area and more cooling in that confined area. By the time it gets to the top of the cooler, there's not a whole lot of heat up there for it to dissipate. So really only half the cooler is doing the work, to be honest. But that's where a small cooler like this definitely, and having less fins, definitely starts to show some of its limitations. Okay, we're back. And I threw the 4080 on here because I went, you know what, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right. We need to add as many frames as possible. 152.5, 170 watts, 175 watts, CPU's at 80C, 82, 81, 82. Now there is a turbofan profile applied to the fan. It's not running 100%, so it's gonna respond to some of that usage. But look at the core temps, 70s, 60s on the E cores, but we're still getting the full 5.5 on all the cores. Remember, throttling is at 100C, so we're 20 degrees below that right now. And please ignore how terrible the game looks right now because of the fact that it's 1080p. What I'm looking for is any sort of fluctuation in temperatures here. Now keep in mind, this is also an open air test bench. So if you have a chassis that doesn't have good cooling or exchange of heat, then it's something that will, why is that guy trying to kill me? Then it will obviously increase your temperatures. And remember, I do have this thing undervolted. So out of the box, it probably would have been, with the auto BIOS optimizing crap, it definitely would have been running probably in the 90s, maybe near 100 degrees. Okay, so now you can see how real world gaming looks. Let me set this now to 1440p, and I wanna see if by reducing the frame rate, if we get any reduction in temperatures, or if this is just the amount of stuff it's having to do around the world. Oh yeah, see there's 75, 77, 73, 74, 79. So now we can see, look at that, we dropped like 40 watts, about 40 watts, just by upping our resolution. So we were definitely CPU bound, which is one of the things that was leading to our higher temps. So that's good. You know, if you're running a high resolution graphics card, now you can see your temps are even lower. Oh, there's 85 for a sec. So it must have loaded something in the background. And now our wattage usage is back up a little bit. So a little bit of a temperature improvement by going to a higher resolution and being less CPU bound. Okay, so I've essentially created a 13600 here. So my ratio limit's set to 5 gigahertz for the P cores, E core set to 3.7. I also have a power limit in there of 154 watts, which is what the 13600 is. So essentially I've just created like an i5 out of it with a lot of cache, but we don't care about the cache right now. We just care about the core usage and stuff. I don't have a core voltage offset set right now, so I am curious as to what it's gonna try and run at, because it certainly shouldn't try to run at like 1.3 or anything stupid like that. I think I could have looked right here in advanced view, but that's fine. I know where it is in hardware monitor and I'm more versed with this. So yeah, 1.252 volts, that's completely unnecessary. So let's see what this looks like. It's at 1.199, 1.154. So it did reduce the voltage based on the core counts. But look at this, 79C, 81C. Here, 154 watts our limit, so it shot above it by about 5 watts. But 80C, we're getting our full core clock, 5 gigahertz and 3.7. 82C max, the cores are, where are my core temps at? There they are here. So my cores are running at high 70s, low 80s, and mid 60s on the E cores. That gave us a 22,017. I'm gonna look up the 13600 Cinebench R23 score right now. I'm just curious if it actually landed where it should. Well, I'm seeing people complain about some 13600Ks scoring 21,000 in R23. So apparently I'm doing all right. Let's bump up the core ratio a little bit. Let's go like 5.2 and 3.9. Let's just see what happens there. 92, 93. That's because our voltage probably went up significantly too, huh? Oh, 1.225. That's a 22,866, not much of an improvement. I'm gonna go minus 50 real quick, and then I think we're gonna call it a day, because I think we've shown that like this cooler is more than capable of running a mid-range CPU. Core temps are in the high 70s, low 80s, mid to low 60s on the E-cores. Yeah, the temperature looks great. I mean, 84C, 82C. Remember, 100C is where we throttle. Like full hard throttle starts at really more like 95 to 100, but 84C is our max right there. My voltage is running at 1.154. There's a 22,551, so we lost hardly any score, a little bit of score by going down 100 megahertz. All right, check it out, high 60s, mid 60s. It's only pulling 105 watts, 107 watts. So one thing I wanna point out is the reason why it was going above 154 is because of the fact that my my short-term turbo timer was actually set to like 4,000 watts or something crazy, right? So I had to set that down also to like the 154. But an actual 13600K's max load TDP is 181 watts. So we've stayed within that. We're getting full 5.1 gigahertz all core, 3.9 gigahertz E-core. It's only pulling 104 watts. And look at this, 66C while running around. There you go. There's a pretty obvious shock. I was truly not expecting. The cooler might look nice, all black, rubber on the corners of the fan and stuff. But just because it looks nice doesn't mean it performs well. But here you go. This is a perfect example of if you don't want to run like a stupid basic little chunk of aluminum box cooler that might come with your Ryzen CPU or your AMD or your Intel CPU. For right now, before the brand starts to raise the price, which I guarantee they're going to do after this video, you can spend $17 US with free shipping. I got that free shipping with Prime, by the way. So if you have Prime, it was free even without hitting the $35 minimum because it was free shipping on the item. That's insane. If you don't have Prime, then I don't know what the shipping would have been. Honestly, I don't know. And I got it next day. I ordered it yesterday, okay? So that's insane that we have a $17 cooler. It's also insane that they're probably gonna increase the price of this cooler to like 30 bucks. At that point, it won't be worth it because you'll find other coolers like the Vitro V5 and stuff that actually are better performing coolers for that price. So if you're on a hard-pressed budget, go buy it now. There's a link down in the description below. It's an Amazon affiliate link. It does help the channel. But go and buy it now for 17 bucks, and then while you're at it, we've got, I don't know, maybe you need the finger socks. I don't know, maybe the little gaming cooler or something. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that stuff yet. I just bought it because I'm like, this is dumb. It kind of goes in with my video the other day where I'm like, they'll put the word gaming on anything to make people buy it. So we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. $17 cooler, it's absolutely nuts. This is the cheapest cooler I've ever reviewed, and it's probably the best performing cooler at its price point. I can't imagine anything being better than this, to be honest. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.